Club members. I'm Jen.
And I'm Carrie.
And this is Warhammer 40k Book Club, where we read from a crag. This is episode number 79, and our book is Ahriman Sorcerer, the continued adventures within the Ahriman Omnibus. The book tells the story of Ahriman looking for yet another lost artifact and or person and or place.
It's like it's a Thousand Suns story.
What even is this? We posted several questions on our website, WH40kbookclub.com, and we encourage participation in our conversations via Voxcast, YouTube, our site, or encrypted Vox. I already said Vox channel. Goodness. Spoiler warning. If somehow you haven't yet read this book, maybe go check out the book and then come back to this post, as we'll be discussing it from start to finish in great detail. With that, let's dive in. Did you like the book?
I did. I enjoyed it.
Nice. I did.
Well, I think it was about halfway through. I was like, Jenna's not going to like this book. I mean, this is written for Thousand Suns fans, and it doesn't even matter like if you're on Ahriman's side or not. I mean, because I would even argue if you're not on Ahriman's side, because I'm not sure if I am either. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I really enjoyed the book, especially since it was up against the Inquisitors, because I just loved showing how the Inquisitors are no better than the Thousand Suns that they're tracking down.
Talk a lot about that later, because I had to agree with you on that. I did not like this book, and it's funny that you say at the halfway point, because at the halfway point is where I almost texted you and was like, I can't. I can't power through this. We have to get through these three so that we can get to the fourth. I really struggled with this book. It was one of those ones where like at the end there, like once you figure out what is going on and they're all in Apollonia, it's like, oh, okay, all right, like now stuff is happening. But for me, I was like, this is too little too late. And it runs into one of the tropes that I really hate, and I know I've mentioned it a lot on this podcast, but it's the Xanatos Gambit. I will dive more into this later. Let's start with what part stood out to you.
Oh man, let's see. Pull out my notes here. There was like a lot of like really fun insights that I kind of enjoyed. Like I loved when he was talking to Ahriman. Just guess which he was talking to Carmenta like near the end, and she was there sassing him a bit. Like I kind of really liked her. Like, you trust too much and too little. You know almost everything but overlook what you do not understand. Your eyes see far but miss the cliff at your feet. Ladies and gentlemen, the Thousand Suns.
Actually, it's funny you say that, because I bookmarked the same thing and I had the same thought. Generally, I don't like when the authors kind of make meta commentary about like characters or legions, but that I was like, that is so on the nose. It goes around the horn to being amazing. Like, yes, because there is literally no better description of the Thousand Suns as a legion that extends to Magnus. You know everything and nothing at the same time. And it basically all comes down to hubris.
And Ahriman said this like chapter 2. He made the comment, knowledge is power, which I know is one of the big Thousand Suns mantras. But the greatest knowledge is how to find more. It's like that constant thirst for knowledge, which is what ended up dooming Magnus. It's really how Tzeentch gets everybody in the end. Like, I can't, how many Inquisitor, short stories or whatever have we read where the Inquisitor just wanted to know everything a little bit more, and oh shit, we just like unleashed a little Tzeentchite. Yeah.
Do you know what the Thousand Suns remind me of? I had this the other night where I was on YouTube and I was looking for, I don't remember what I was looking for, but it was something cooking related. I was looking for like how to do something. And then 3 hours later, I can now tell you the complete history of like all of these random things, because there is, and I feel like YouTube is particularly, oh god, YouTube is Tzeentch. Oh my goodness. But the algorithm knows, right? Especially if you're learning stuff. It's like, hey, do you want to listen to this? Yes, I do. Oh, do you want to listen to this too? Mm-hmm. Boy, do I. Because we as human beings want to know more about the world, right? And that's, as Ted Lasso said, be inquisitive, not judgmental, or curious,
Be
not
curious, yeah.
judgmental. Yeah. We are curious creatures by and large, right? I mean, how many myths are there about that? Pandora, anyone? We like to know more. And I feel like the Thousand Suns, I could even made a quip about that as I was like on hour 2 of diving down a rabbit hole on YouTube. I was like, oh my God, this is what happened to the Thousand Suns. Um, it is their eternal Achilles heel, I guess. It's their curse. Their curse is this just drive for more knowledge. And Zinch is all too ready to give it to them.
Yeah, that's
No
why
matter the cost.
something that made me sad, but I understood why Sanaked felt this way was when he was telling, Ignis, how he was feeling about all this. And he was like, no, it's like Ahriman wasn't wrong in his idea of how to save us, but he was wrong to believe that we were worth saving. So it's like he's come around full circle on the whole thing. Like, we were meddling with things that we shouldn't have been doing. We were warned. And now here we are, we're not worth saving. And it was a really interesting way, like how he kind of came around to that, and he said that we are heirs of blind kings, ruling a kingdom of ashes. I love that.
Loved that line. Sanaked was actually one of my favorite characters.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of mine too. I mean, so he was a major player also in the short stories that were right before this. And so, but he was just like the swordsman, kind of like almost like his own little Lucius. So it's kind of cool to see him actually having this totally different like viewpoint on things. And he was talking about, he's like, look at all these people that were trying to stop us from like destroying ourselves. And he starts with the Emperor. And right there, like, yeah. He's like the Emperor, Cain, and Amon. And Cain, I don't think Cain believes in what Abaddon is doing either, to be totally honest. I think he's a survivor, is honestly what it is. He's not with Ahriman. He's not with Magnus. He's like, no, we done messed up, yo, and we're done with all of this. And it's just trying to get through the next day. So so as much as I like the Thousand Suns, and I like the Thousand Suns because I don't know. I guess I kind of fall for the the road to hell is paved with good intentions, because they want to believe that they're doing the right thing, like Magnus wanted to believe so hard. And part of it is that honestly, in False Gods, I felt so sorry for Magnus, because here he is entering in this peyote dream that Erebus has tricked Horus into doing, and Magnus shows up and was just like, he's tricking you. This is not how you think it is. And what does Horus do? You're not supposed to be here, Magnus.
Dad said that's not okay.
Like, you're going to listen to this guy. I just pointed out to you that he's lying to you and trying to trick you, and you're going to instead turn on me because I'm going to disobeying Dad, but I'm doing this to try to save you. That, honestly, I probably wouldn't have been such a Thousand Suns person if it was not really for that moment. So thank you, Graham McNeil. This is all your fault. In so many ways, God. This is all your fault.
I have to tweet at him.
Well, I did just finish Angel Exterminatus as well. So anyone in the drinking game at home, go ahead and drink. I just mentioned Horus Heresy. He's made me really like Perturbo as well. So anyway, so there is that. But it's just... But it does... I understand why you don't like them. Because I understand like how annoying it is to constantly be beating, the definition of insanity, try and keep doing the same things. But it's like, well, this time I have it. Well, this time I have it. And it's just, Ahriman, I think just what drives him is this great guilt of what... Because when they went to the planet of the sorcerers, his immediate thought was, this is not okay. And I do not like this. I do not like how Magnus has banished us here. And I'm watching everybody change. I want to save everybody. And it's just tragic because he obviously doesn't know the story because Magnus never told him, like his own father never told him about how Magnus lost his eye. It was never going to work out. You're constantly making these bargains that you're not realizing that you're making to try to save everybody.
You are. And I can only handle so much of that. And this is one of those core things that you and I disagree on, which is the joy of the Warhammer 40k universe, because both of us are probably right. I look at that and I'm like, oh yeah, like had the Emperor told them the truth, like, okay, this is what the warp is and this is all of this stuff, I still think Magnus would have been like, oh, okay, old man, but I can tame it. Like,
you know what? You're probably right.
Well, but I mean, I can also see the other argument. And I think that's one of the glorious things about the Warhammer 40k universe is depending on whether or not you like a character, you can totally argue for or against that character. And I think it's just, I get like all like, Warhammer 40k. But Ahriman in particular, like there's only so much tragedy that I can handle. And this book was just a little too much leaning into the tragedy of the Thousand Sons. Like every now and then he would make this quip and I'm like, you're right. Like when he talks about like, we don't deserve to be saved. Like, gotta say I agree with you there, friend. Like, but let's, because this is actually a good bridge into, let's start with Ahriman himself. Do you like him as a character and as a protagonist? Is he compelling in these books? Are you invested in his adventures?
I don't have an easy answer for that because the answer is kind of yes, but also no at the same time.
I think I'm the opposite. Like where yes, you are, but you're also kind of not. I am not. I kind of am a little bit. And it runs into one of those problems, to me at least, this book especially. Pre-Rift, there's really not anything you can do with Ahriman. What is Ahriman's quest? Find the Black Library, find a cure, fix my mistakes, save my legion. Friend, you can't do that without dramatically altering the lore of 40k. So for me, I'm kind of like, nothing's going to happen in this. But the reason I didn't call you when I was at the halfway point to be like, I can't, is that part of me is like, see what this bonehead does in the end.
And
I'm the opposite.
You know, and I get that. You know, it's like every time I read about Fabulous Bill, I'm like, I hate this guy so much. I hate him. He doesn't do anything good for anybody, and all I want him to do is just die and be written off in the sunset, but I know that will never happen because he's
Fabulous Bill. He's one of the named ones. Ahriman.
Well, that
I think it's kind of funny it's called Ahriman Eternal, but like, Ahriman is eternal.
Would it be boring? We didn't have a character that we hated that much? I mean,
oh my god. Or a character to debate. I hate this character. You like this character. Could you imagine how dull it would be if we didn't have these people in this universe? It's one of the things that makes me just be like, 40k. Because you have this stuff where you can very easily, right, argue for it and against it. And I just, oh man. And I think part of me kind of low-key loves to hate Ahriman. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I kind of like knowing that he's out there just...
You know, the weird thing about him is that he's a train wreck. And you just, like, how is he going to wreck the train this time? You know, like that one, like, stupid friend that we all have that keeps making bad decisions and makes their life worse. How are they going to screw everything up this time?
Don't do it. But they still do it anyway.
Oh, because they know better than you. You don't know.
It's true.
You don't know their life.
You've only known them for X years. Yes. I think here's the thing that I struggle with, and I'm curious of your thoughts on this. I mentioned the Xanatos Gambit earlier. I feel like one of the things with Ahriman is that all of his stories, except for the Rubicon, obviously, or the Rubik, little curveball there. A lot of these stories feel like Xanatos gambits, right? Like he gets down to the planet and Sanaked is like, I'm gonna kill you now, and Ahriman's like, yeah, I know. It's exactly what I wanted you to do. Really?
But how Zinchi is that, right? Seriously, the long game?
It's true.
I mean, there's that meme of like, everything, falls apart and the plans get done and Zinchi's just like, yes, it's all coming together. And honestly, the ending to this reminded me a lot of Lords of Silence in a way. You don't know who's on whose side and who's being manipulated, like who's killing who, and
does that bicker and argue?
It reminded me a lot of that. And I know this book was written first, but it was still kind of a lot of that, who's playing whom here? Everyone thinks they're playing the other one. Well, in the world of Tzeentch, well, there's only one winner, and that's Tzeentch. Like, not even his minions. It's only Tzeentch is the winner, because he's, he ain't going anywhere. Playing that long game. And I think Ahriman, as much as Ahriman doesn't want anything to do with demons, like, he's fine with having, because like the short stories were about another Thousand Son that he basically put in his employ to constantly be binding demons and casting demons. And the last short story, he didn't make it, finally burned himself out. Big shock. So Ahriman has no problem with other people employing these demons, but he's not going to sully himself in with that, because, that's how, because talk about how he still looks pure. He still looks the way he always did, because he is not 100% into the chaos. He's no problem using people. That's the big difference here, is that how much he's willing to use people. And in so many ways, it's very much like how his father is. Like when his father, his Magnus, went to go talk to Horus and then went and broke the webway, how many Thousand Sons did he have to sacrifice to give him the power to be able to, move his astral form, using X-Man terms now, his astral form, across the universe?
Yeah. No,
and
it's one of those really interesting things about Ahriman, going back to that initial quote that you were mentioning that we both really liked. He is both this, I just want to save my legion and I just want to help my brothers. And yet,
I got no problem breaking those eggs along the way.
Exactly. I mean, he is 100% the you got to break some eggs to make an omelet type of guy. But it's the omelet that he wants to make. It's not necessarily like for the greater good. And it always, or at least that's how it feels in the moment, especially in this book at that end. You don't even know this is going to get you what you want.
No.
You think it's going to.
No, but that's where I think it was such a great parallel with the Inquisition. Right there.
And we will definitely talk about them because boy, oh boy. But I also wanted to talk about Sanaked because how do you feel about him as a partner or an adversary to Ahriman? Because he was kind of this very interesting foil. Like, as you mentioned, one of the things I always do find interesting about the Thousand Sons is when you do, I think it's Iskander Kane who said it. Yeah, it was Kane who said it. In one of the books where they're fighting and oh my gosh, my favorite character, Leorvine, kind of looks at him and is like, whoa. And he's like, dude, we were also warriors. We weren't just a bunch of sorcerers sitting around, okay? I like when you find those Thousand Sons who are like, oh yeah, I am a warrior. Mm-hmm. I will still fight you. I am an excellent, like this guy devoted himself to that and he had a plan. But that was basically his thing is like, oh, I'll just overpower him. Because I am a superior swordsman. I do like when you see those Thousand Sons characters. I don't know why, but it's an interesting bit of flavor to them when they're just like, yes, I'm a sorcerer, but also.
Well, there's one thing that, Ahriman used to be like that. Like, if you read A Thousand Sons, like, he was a swordsman. Mm-hmm. And, yep. Now he's kind of moved away from that, but, things have happened. It's been a few thousand years.
He's been busy.
He's been a little busy,
some trauma,
creating the Rubrique, getting banished, hiding on a ship, all these kinds of things.
Arguably, really quickly, he has been arguably the busiest since the heresy, like in terms of just how much stuff he's done, good, bad, indifferent.
I mean, sure. I mean, because even when Cain found Abaddon, he was just hanging out in the vengeful spirit going, my life sucks. I can't even put my hair up anymore. It's just all kind of down in my face.
My palm tree.
My palm, that's right, my palm tree.
But did you like Sanaked as a partner, as an adversary?
I did.
Was he
But
compelling?
but like I said earlier, I liked him in the short stories as well, and it was really funny because the short stories actually was told from a perspective, like I said, of that guy who could actually conjure demons. He first sees Sanaked on the ship, and his first thought is, I never wanted to see that guy again, ever. I was like, well, that's interesting. But I liked, but the fact that he was the
So
swords.
bad I didn't read the short stories now.
They're interesting. Like they don't have a huge bearing on what happens here, but the short stories actually tell how Ahriman gets out of the eye.
Oh.
Yeah.
Too long did not read?
I don't even know if I can do that.
Well, of course not, because it's an Ahriman plot.
I mean, there was a lot of moving pieces, and there was like
He is the Rube Goldberg of human beings.
oh my god, that's so yes, he is. You know, and like I mean, Be'lakor was even involved. I mean, there was a lot going on. there was a lot, but yes. So, but I mean, I did like Sanaked, and I really liked him as an adversary because I understood how he felt. I totally understood. He's just like, dude, just stop, let it go.
Right.
Yeah,
Just kind of.
he was like, you know, he talked about how he was almost completely burned out by Cain, and so he still had some, but not as strong as he was, which I think is one reason why he honed the swords as much as he did. But you know, but he understood. It's like we messed up. Like it's, you know, even Magnus had that in the beginning. You know, with Thousand Sons, he's like, I've doomed us to this. We have to let them come. But then feeling his sons dying was too much for him. He's like, I can't. But that's where Sanaked is. We messed up. We need to stop. You're making things worse. Just let us go. And that means I have to kill you, even though I do consider you a friend. That's the only way you're going to stop, and that's what I have to do. And I thought he planned it very well. Get him into the one area where he has none of his sorcery, except that he also forgot that Ahriman still knows how to fight as well. And he forgot that Ahriman plays the long game.
Yeah. I wouldn't turn my back, figuratively or literally, on Ahriman for anything. And that was the only thing that made me feel a little bad. Like when Ahriman's just like, I saw you planning this. I was like, oh, bruh, you should have known.
Right.
Like, come on.
Everything was going to plan. I mean, didn't Ignis kind of agree with you like way too quickly? Like the mathematician guy, okay? Which I thought his ability was pretty damn cool.
Okay, I will give you that. I found that part fascinating, and I did like him a lot. Yeah, that's probably the only character that I was like, fuck it.
I mean, I know we bashed numerology before, but the way that he was handling it, that was fun. How he's like talking about how he can see like all the different angles, and he's like, we need to do this and this. It's by this number because he can extrapolate the pattern like that. I'm like, that's kind of cool.
The meme of the woman pondering and all like the mathematical equations.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly actually what I thought of with him.
So, I hated the numerology section in the Beckwin book because it was so long and boring and pointless and pretentious. But
the latter, really.
Mostly the latter, let's be real. But in Lords of Silence, I loved all the numerology in that because Nurgle is very big into numerology.
Oh yeah, that's true.
And so I always liked how he had an entire character who was basically a killer accountant, right? That he would go and run numbers by him, and I liked that was how he would just sit there and he would count because that was how he was processing things. So I kind of have. I don't want to have pretentious number stuff thrown at me, but I really do like it when I see the characters who use it. And I thought that was kind of cool.
I really like
because
mathematician sorcerer. How cool is that?
Well, what are the Thousand Sons at their heart? They're scholars.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't all decide to go into 18th century poetry.
No,
Like,
and they kind of talked about that a little bit because they talked about the Corvidae and they talked about a little bit of their different, and I've forgotten like all their different factions and how really cool, like pre-heresy, they really were with their different abilities, because there were some that were like Ahriman, who were these master sorcerers and librarians, and then there was some like Ignis, and then there were the researchers. I was like, I totally forgot that they were, and we've seen bits and pieces of that. The Death Guard was like that too. Like Vork's was a researcher.
the Thousand Sons, that's the only part of their tragedy that I really do like. I'm like, oh man. Because let's pretend for a second that the Chaos Gods did not exist, right? That everything was just fine. You could see a world in which the Thousand Sons would have been like the Skolum, right? Where this is where everybody would have gone to learn from these people because they have these superhuman brains and they have all these abilities. These would have been, they basically would have been running Hogwarts in the 40k universe.
Sure.
Right? Like, you can see that. And that, like, in the Emperor's grand plan, if he could have created the webway, if he could have kept the Chaos Gods at bay, you would have had this really neat concept for them. And that part does make me very sad. And yeah, that character really kind of tapped into that part of it where I was like, oh, dang it. Let's dive in to both of our favorites. What did you think of the Inquisitors?
Oh my god.
Because there is Isdabur and Iabel. So let's
I mean, she wasn't really allowed.
Did you like either?
She wasn't really allowed long enough for me to have an opinion.
That's fair.
About her. But
did you like Isdabur?
No.
Isdabar?
Nope.
Tell me more.
And even when they, talked about, how he when as soon as he said the Ordo Cyclopes, I'm like, I am done with you people because you guys are all monsters. You guys think you're so much better than everybody else, but you're no better than the people that you are hunting.
I get so tired of the little teeny niggling Ordos that they're like, well, for this story, Ordo Iranus Warrior A. I get really sick of that. But you're not wrong. It's one of the great tragedies of the Inquisition, right? Because they have so much unchecked power, and because they have so much more knowledge than your average imperial citizen, they're essentially drunk on it. And yes, like, he was kind of a heavy-handed parallel to Ahriman. Like, look, they're basically opposite sides of the same coin. But you know what?
Because he should have destroyed the Athenaeum. That's heresy there. But that's knowledge, right? And like they even got into this big debate, about like, I don't know if I wrote it down here, if I just took my notes, like actually like in my book, where no, I didn't write it down, but basically like where he and Ahriman kind of got into a debate back and forth for like who sucks more. He's, no, it wasn't him, it was Astreus. So it's like, I've seen what you do to worlds. You burn an entire world to get one person. Whereas I'm like, didn't y'all do that to like attract the Inquisition, to get them to come there?
Funny.
So that's kind of
funny.
When
they do it, it's justified. But when the other side does it, God, it's monstrous. I can't believe
it was just like that was interesting. But the two of them were going back and forth for, who was more right in acquiring knowledge. I was like, you both are wrong. You both are 100% wrong, and neither one of y'all see it. And that's the problem. Like, honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if Tzeentch already has his little, I don't know, feathers, tentacles, whatever he feels like having that day, kind of like into Isdabar. Because, I mean, this guy is begging for Tzeentch to interfere in his life somehow.
In that scene, all I could think about was that interaction in Megamind, where he's like, you were right. I was less right. Because all I could think of, because you're not wrong. And generally, okay, I'm not going to lie, it did go a little too heavy-handed for me. And I'm like, I get it, as you would say.
Yeah.
Ayn Rand, I've got it.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it did get that way.
It is one of the, excuse you, it is, sorry. My cat's decided she needs attention now. It is one of those quintessential things about the Inquisition that it's like, okay, yeah, you're gonna sit there and point at this guy and be like, you guys did all this just to get me here? Rude. Monstrous.
Mm-hmm.
Bruh.
Right.
The trail of bodies behind you, personally behind you, let alone your order, let alone the Inquisition, is stellar. And okay, yes, we've seen it in Space Marine books, like with the Ultramarines and any other Astartes factions, where they have to exterminatus a world, right? The Astartes always do it under we gotta be better safe than sorry, but God, it sucks. I hate having to do this, except for the Dark Angels. If there was a, other Dark Angel, well,
If there was like not a dark angel there.
Exactly. And then in which case, no, we got to do the thing. It's just common sense. But there's always this kind of like, I can't believe we have to do this mentality, right? I mean, they do it. They still do it, but at least they feel guilty about it. And I guess, I don't know, if you're on the planet that they exterminatus, you probably don't care that one faction felt guilty and the other didn't. But the haste at which the Inquisition tends to just be like, screw it, just exterminatus it. I mean, and again, and the horrible, awful things they do in the pursuit of knowledge. And as you said, this item was heresy. And again, and you know that this like triggered me hardcore because of my feelings on Eisenhorn. Like, the amount of chaos these people just dip their they don't even dip their feet into it. It's a zero entry pool and they're up to their necks in it. They had plenty of opportunity to see like, oh, this is chaos. This is heresy. Yeah, no, I'm just going to keep going because, I mean, I guess it's fine. It's fine. It is
And
such
how
a
many
trigger issue for
people,
me.
how many like, low-level psychers, they're just fine, just sacrificing to continue writing this. It's disgusting.
It's awful. And look, I get like, we have already made peace as a universe. We have made peace. The psychers that get sacrificed to keep the emperor, like, it's the sausage factory, right?
Oh, yeah.
The pigs go
Oh,
in
yeah.
and the beacon stays lit. But this felt so much more distasteful because you're talking about the difference between the beacon
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and
the Astronomicon and what Magnus is doing right now. But y'all aren't doing anything about it. It's not like you're going to try to go to the planet of the sorcerers or anything and try to take care of him. I mean, if I thought you guys were actually doing something with it, maybe I wouldn't think so harsh. But you're not. You're just like, he's like the smartest person alive because technically he is. Because the Emperor's, not technically alive. Look at all this knowledge that's coming in. This is great. And we're just going to keep it with our little Ordo. And if any Thousand Suns happen to pop up, well, we're going to take care of them. But we like this. Okay.
Yep. It's really kind of disgusting. And he, in particular, I mean, like, the domino chain that he essentially sets off with this, like, I mean, how many, like, tragedies and awful events in current 40k can you arguably, destruction of Cadia, can you arguably trace back to this guy? Just be like, thanks, bud. Hope it was worth it. And it's, I mean, like, we make a lot of fun of, like, the NSA and your FBI agent who watches your phone calls, right? And how boring you must be to them. But, like, that's what this almost reminds me of. Like, oh, look at all this knowledge. Oh, that's really interesting, too. Like, you're not even like, okay, we're going to save mankind with all of this.
Right.
I never got that impression.
Oh,
like,
no.
He gave some lip service, but I'm like, yeah? What exactly are you doing with it? They're like the dog that caught the tire that's attached to the car.
Yeah.
What do you do with it?
Well,
I just...
apparently you go and declare that an entire chapter that is now loyal, you're just going to go destroy. Because... reasons. Celestial Lions, anyone?
I know you and I have said this multiple times, and I think we had when we still had our Patreon, I think we did an entire episode about this, but, like, the Inquisition is the Imperium's greatest strength and their greatest enemy. at the same time. Like, this is an organization that needs to be called to heal. Hardcore. I don't know who's going to do that.
I don't know either, because the High Lords of Terra are just as corrupt. Let's be real.
Right. Well, I don't know. Like, the good side of me would like to think that people like Jack would be appalled if they really knew what the Inquisition was up to. I think the Inquisition is one of those entities that, like, the High Lords are like, we kind of know they're sketchy, but we're just going to close our eyes and pretend that it's okay because they seem to also be doing a lot of good. Like, I think if they were to actually take a deep dive, and that's probably why they haven't, like, people like Jack aren't going to go look into the Inquisition because that's not going to end well for anybody, right? Like, I don't know who it is equipped to do it. Like, my husband and I were actually arguing about that. I was like, which? Because Robbie Bobby obviously can't. He has his hands full.
No, but he's the only one who can.
But what if one of his brothers were to come back? Who does he stick on the Inquisition first? And Lehman Russ is not the right answer.
No, and neither is the Lion.
This is where we started to get, I was like, well, it would be the Lion, right? Who would just be like, maybe Rogel Dorn?
I think Dorn.
I think probably Dorn. I think Dorn would have to be the one who comes back and is like, all right, you primitive screwheads, listen up. And exiting some people stage right. Oh, him? He got disappeared. I'm sure he's somewhere.
He was suicided.
Maybe he chased... maybe they gave him the Epstein. Maybe he tracked down 1,000 Sun. Whoops.
Whoopsie.
Like, at this point...
Are you saying he flew too close to the sun?
Hey-o. That would just become a thing. Oh, looks like he flew too close to the sun. Yeah. Did his overall, like, plan and scheme, did it all make sense to you?
No. Because it's the Inquisition. No, because I don't think he even knows. I think he, like, says a bunch of stuff.
Lip service.
Yes. I don't think Iobel even knew. I think, he was fine with her sacrifice in a way. Like, no, he didn't want them to discover Apollonia, but, again, it's like, well, that's one less person who knows my secret now at the same time. Because he knows the Grey Knights aren't going to say anything.
Let's transition to the other, like, major antagonists of this, which are the Space Wolves. Were they a good addition to the plot?
To me, they were comic relief. Because it cracked me up that they just went and attacked a White Consul's ship and destroyed everybody there. I was like, you got... Like, I understand that you believe that you're on a mission from God, but, not supposed to be attacking other loyalist chapters just because they happen to be asking, like, why are you in this sector of space? Because all you have to do is say we're the Space Wolves. You don't have to explain shit, and they will let you go because they don't want to deal with Space Wolves.
Like, it was such an easy question. Like, cuz? Like, we're Space Wolves? We're on the same side?
Yeah.
But
so, and, when the Grey Knights went and boarded, I was like, well, this is going to be weird. Like, surely they're going to realize, hey, it's not the same thing. But instead, they're just like, they used to wear the crimson, but now it's the silver. I'm just like, this is hysterical.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Of course, the Inquisition's like, we're now turning our eyes to the Sons of Rus. I'm like, well, I mean, depending on when this took place, compared to Ragnar Blackmane, which I think that took place before. You know what? Who knows? That could have been right around the same time. I have no idea. But yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I know it happens before the Rift and before the attack on Fenris. That's
right.
A wide swath of time.
But Ragnar Blackmane was also like a long time ago.
Right, that's what I'm saying, is that I know it took place before the major events, but
right. Right, so I mean, because that was before he was even a Wolf Lord. So anyway, so I don't know. I have a feeling we're going to
I
see him in the next book. I just have this. No, not the Space Wolves, obviously. They're kind of dead. But Izdabar, I think we will. I did look up Asturias. Like, I was like, okay, because he kept saying, like, you're not one of us. So I looked him up, and then I quickly had to, like, shut it down because it was going to get into spoiler territory. But it would never said what chapter he originally was. So I am curious if we get into it all of a sudden. We're going to look on the Lexicanum or whatever for what chapter, what the chapter supposedly did. Although with the Celestial Alliance, perhaps they just disagreed with what the Inquisition did.
entirely possible.
What if he is one of the Celestial Alliance?
That actually might go around the horn to being kind of awesome. Not even gonna lie to you. Yeah, I would kind of laugh about that. I just thought the Space Wolves were too much. Like, and we'll talk a little
Was
bit
it
more
like a
about
Spider-Man 3 incident?
It was exactly that to mine. And we will talk more about this, or we can actually bridge into this right now if you want. You've got the Grey Knights, you have the Inquisition, you have the Space Wolves, you have his own seeming comrades. Like, Ahriman is beset upon all sides. Like, it just felt like a little too much. And I know I've said this before, but I am like so over the Inquisition versus the Space Wolves, and like when they like when everybody all of a sudden is like, who's on what side? Like, that whole scene was humorous mildly, and then I quickly was just like, oh, I just don't care about any of this.
But you know,
And it's not even
I think
it's not even that they showed the Space Wolves in a pretty, I mean, they showed them in kind of a negative light, right? Because it's a Thousand Sons book. Makes sense, totally on board with that. I just felt like it was Spider-Man 3 syndrome. It was just too much. They were the Sandman of this book.
okay,
I
so
think the Inquisition was Hobgoblin.
So Ahriman Exile was first published in 2013. So, I mean, this would have been
2015, 2016?
Huh? So
Does that
Sorcerer
mean
was
this
in
was released?
2014.
Oh, so they came out like back to back.
Yes, they did. 2013, 2014, 2015. So,
Interesting. That explains a lot, actually.
which actually makes me, oh gosh, I wish I could just turn around and just like bring Ragnar Blackmane in my hand just so I could kind of get, yeah, I know, right? Bring in my hand so I could look up the original publication date on that, because I'm aware that was just like all around the same time with the Inquisition and the Space Wolves, like that whole idea was kind of coming around.
Hold, please. Play your own
right.
hold music while we sit here. 2016.
Okay, so this could have actually.
We could get the physical book using our ESPN, or
we
could use the most powerful information tool known to man.
Sometimes I like just having a book in my hands, Jen.
So I can't argue with that.
I mean, so this might have actually kind of started in a way, and because we're coming we're coming in like near the end of this, you know, it's just it feels like it's too much, you know, and that happens when you read stuff when you get somewhere like nearly 10 years later. That's depressing.
Like when you try to read Peter Straub's Ghost Story in 2022, or when I read it was like 2016, and you're like, wow, this is boring, trite, and done 6,000. Oh, actually, these guys probably started this trope. Damn it. Had I read this in 1972, this would have been mind-boggling. Kind of hard sometimes when we go back and read older books, because it's hard to tell which came first. And you're entirely, you know what, you could be right. This could have been the start of the weirdness. Was that? Yeah, that was. It could have been the start of the weirdness. I don't know. All I know is that I'm not digging it.
Well, no, but you know, and also you got to think about, so 2013, let's say John French started this. Maybe he didn't. I bet it was some campaign, and then he fed off of that is most likely what had happened. But now, like moving closer to when the rift opens, you know, we have the whole thing with Magnus and, you know, invading, coming down on Fenris. The rift opens. We have the Inquisition really, meddling in things and really getting pissy with the Space Wolves. We have Reboot Gulliman, who's trying to get in with the Space Wolves and hold off the Inquisition. So there's just kind of a lot that we've been doing right now. So it makes sense that we're tired of it. I have a feeling, just saying, if we had read this back then, we would have gotten tired of it much sooner.
That's probably true. That is probably completely true. But I do stand by my statement that they just felt like the Sandman of this series. Where it's like, look, I like you guys. I love the actor who played Sandman. I like your arc. I like the story. I like what they did with you, but it's just too much.
I was actually really curious, like, why are we even dealing with this right now? Because it got near the end of the book. I was like, we're the Space Wolves. Oh, like, werewolf, where? Their wolf.
Their wolf. Their Ahriman.
They're Grey Knights.
For me, it almost felt like, I felt as though he switched gears. Like, he started writing the book and was like, oh, all right, I'm going to start a book and it's going to be the Space Wolves hunting down Ahriman. And I will admit, in those first couple chapters, I was like, yeah, all right, this is going to be this kind of a night. This is good. And then it quickly became clear that I think he shifted gears and was like, oh, wait, but what if there's an Inquisitor? And I think it probably was one of those things where he was like, I could show how the Inquisition and Ahriman, like, these are, or the Thousand Sons in general, like, this is a thing, right? They're both heading down the same path of damnation. And then he all of a sudden was like, oh, shit, there were Space Wolves in this book. Oh, I gotta get those back in. Like, they really, I'm with you, they kind of felt forgotten. Like, they would just kind of appear, like, we're still here, and then go away. And you were like, oh, all right. Don't really care that you're still here. Up,
killed a bunch of white consuls, and you're like, whoa, that escalated quickly, and then it disappeared again.
That really got out of hand.
Even for the Space Wolves.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. Yeah, I had some real issues with that. Just for a variety of reasons.
But then again, that kind of shows, like, you like the Space Wolves. And I don't. So it's just kind of those opposite, sides of how we're kind of viewing that mechanic through it as well.
You know what? And 100%, it totally could be that. I want to say it wasn't, and they were just too much. I think I would have liked it had he ditched one of those. Because, again, you have the Grey Knights. You have the Inquisition. You have his own guys. And his own guys...
but really, the Inquisition and Grey Knights are like a 2-for-1 special. If you think about it.
No. It's like a BOGO. Oh, my gosh. So, did you... were any of the factions... None of the factions felt like they were just a little too extra for you? Like, you enjoyed all of them? You, especially with the Grey Knights, because as soon as I saw a Grey Knight, I was like, oh, Carrie's going to be happy.
Yeah, except that these were assholes. And they didn't think for themselves.
Can we
I have issues with the Grey Knights. Like, as much as I love them, and it's really... Graham McNeil, I'm calling you out a lot, but it's really because of Graham McNeil that I started to like them, because they were brought in on The Killing Ground as my first introduction to the Grey Knights. And then I see them, and then I read, Sons of Titan, and that was great, but they weren't at the machinations of an Inquisitor in that one either. Yes, there was an Inquisitor there, but they were making their own decisions. And in Ragnar Blackmane, they were having issues with the Inquisitor, but even when the Inquisitor's making orders, even they were just like, no, like, I don't think so. Like, he's like, we're going to kill all the Space Wolves, and they're like,
That's not in Ragnar Blackname. That's
sorry, Emperor's Gift. Same author, but you know what I meant.
Same author, but that just dawned on me. That's also the one where all of those issues start, and that's 2012. We're just going to axe the Space Wolves.
Okay, was that Emperor's Gift? So it was 2012? Okay.
I was like, it's not Ragnar Blackmane. I could not think of it, and then it just popped into me. It's Emperor's Gift.
Yes, because Ragnar Blackmane in the timeline actually comes after that. Yeah. All right, anyway.
No, totally following you.
Yeah. I had ADB. I had the right guy.
You had the right author.
Right. But yeah, so but they were thinking on their own. And this Sindrian guy, You were just this guy's personal, attack dog. Like, that's really all you were. And I was kind of disgusted by it. It was really cool, like, when he fought and they talked about, them all uniting in one, and they had the, big old angel wings and, their thought form, and they were attacking Astraeus and everything. That was all Sanaked, sorry. That was all really, really neat. But, the fact that the Grey Knights are either badass or they're just lapdogs is a problem, I think, with the faction.
No, I agree 100%. And the thing that it reminds me of is that in the 80s and 90s, especially, and I feel, you still see this a little bit now in modern movies, but in the 80s and 90s, especially in movies, if your protagonist is a police officer, then police officers are just dogged, good people who just want to help people, and the FBI are assholes who are secretive and they don't want to help people and they have their own agendas.
Die Hard.
If your protagonist is the FBI agent, then the police are all thugs and hillbillies and they just want to thwart people and throw around their authority. And it's the FBI who are the heroes, who are noble and they use their superior detecting powers. Like, it, depending on from which point of view it was told, you got wildly disparate views on these two factions of people. I feel like the Grey Knights are the same way. If you have a Grey Knight-centric book and it's following the Grey Knights, they are unique individual snowflakes and they have their own desires and their own missions and their own ideas. If it is an Inquisitor, and especially if it is an Inquisitor that is being portrayed as maybe not super awesome, then they're just minions. They're really no different than the Minotaurs in that way. Or the Inquisition.
Right.
They are very powerful psychers on a tight leash, right? The reason in the Emperor's ADB's, I will say it, ADB's a better author, so he doesn't fall into that trap as much, but the reason that his Grey Knights were so much more unique and thinky is because it's following a Grey Knight. The bad Inquisitor is a side character to those people.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree with you. And we talk a lot about this, where there's just these wildly disparate views of Primarchs, of factions, of people, these named characters. The Grey Knights are particularly bad about this.
I mean, even when Chris Wright brought them in with Watchers of the Throne, that very first book, and they drop down, and they're helping the Custodians. Custodians are like, I think I know who they are, but we don't care. They're fighting on our side. And then the Sisters of Silence show up, and the Grey Knights are like, oh, God. Bad headache.
Can you go stand over there?
But it's cool. Like, we can still do this. I mean, that's what I mean.
No, I feel it. I feel that, and I agree.
Because Sindrian, to me, he was barely a character.
He was barely a character. He was more like
Master Chief of Halo has more personality than him.
He reminded me, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. The only one that's coming to mind is John Wick, Halle Berry's character, when she has the two Belgian Malinois that she sicks on people and commands, and they're badass. They were basically attack dogs for the Inquisitor. No real personality, no real motivation. You didn't get the impression there was a whole lot going on up here. I just listen to whatever my overlords tell me to do. And that's not Space Marines, yo.
No.
And I think for me too, because it was just so much, like, I didn't like the way they were handled, and it was just one thing too many.
Yeah.
Which is really funny, given that some of the books I like is when it's just so many things it turns into an 80s action movie. How's it going there?
Shroud of Night?
Yes, Shroud of Night.
I mean, that's where you were going. You said 80s action movie, yeah.
It has like 11 billion things in it, and it all works.
But I think it also depends on your feelings on a faction.
It could be, and you and I both like the Grey Knights. I don't like them quite as much as you do, but we both like the Grey Knights. So when they're not being utilized to their full potential, it's disappointing.
Yeah, 100%.
Like, if they wanted lapdogs, call in the Minotaurs. Go do that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Where does Ahriman go from here? He's got a pet Inquisitor thing. He's destroyed a moon.
You talk about the memory viable just kind of hanging out in his head. That's just weird, but whatever, dude. I guess it's better than keeping her skull on a shelf and talking to it. So, we got that going for us.
Only Fulgrim does that, to be clear.
Right, but still, it's still not, it's better, slightly better than a skull. We have a living book.
All I could think of was the book from Hocus Pocus. I expected him to be like, book.
I'm curious what happens to Astraeus after this, because, Ahriman said that if you survive this, they're going to turn you against me. So I'm like, okay, they're basically going to make him some sort of like Grey Knight thing, whatever. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have that, and Ahriman's going to find out that the Athenaeum is not teaching him anything he already knew, because the whole thing kind of confused me, because when he talked about trying to get the Athenaeum because it's the book of Magnus, I was like, what happened to the book? You had it. Magnus gave it to you at the end of Thousand Suns. Did you lose it? Did Magnus take it back? I'm very curious about that. But so now he has this feeling. So the next book is called Ahriman Unchanged. Mm-hmm. So that says to me a few things. One, he hasn't learned any lessons.
My Ahriman?
I know. And or two.
Woman, let me get the fainting couch before you say such things.
And or number two, that nothing changed, like nothing he did changed anything. So I'm hesitant about Unchanged, because like this book I thought was pretty good in terms of action and what he was doing. We already know that what he's going to try is going to fail, because like we said, otherwise that'd be like a major lore changing thing with him. He can't find the Black Library because that would, look, we broke Cadia. We have a loyalist Primarch alive. Like, let's give us another 20 years before we can like give Ahriman the Black Library or something crazy like that.
Right. I will say along those lines, I'm not looking forward to the third book at all. Oh God, we're gonna read it because we have started this, damn it, and I'm not a quitter. Most of the times. But
maybe we should read it next then, just to get it over with.
No.
That was fast.
No, thank you. I'm good for now. Thank you for offering, though. It was so nice of you.
I'm a giver.
If I could read the entire friggin' Twilight series, I can read the entire Ahriman series. I'm not
that
looking forward to this.
That might have been shorter.
To be fair. But if I could read 7 of the Wheel of Time books.
All right, you beat me there.
Okay. And my husband read all of them. I need some time before we read the third one, but I am looking forward to the fourth book because things are a moving and a changing now.
Yes.
So I will be interested. I know that Ahriman played a part in the 13th Black Crusade.
So yeah, I am curious about that, and I'm curious about, because obviously with the Rift, things are going to change for Ahriman. So I'm very curious, like how the Rift changes what he does. So that could
exactly. And they talk about the psychic awakening. So what does that look like for the Thousand Suns? What does that look like for Ahriman? Like, no joke, as much as I really did not like this book, and I really don't want to read the third one, I am excited for the fourth because I feel like he could do something. And he doesn't just have to spin his wheels in the mud. Like, things can happen. And you alluded to this earlier, but yeah, I want to see when Abaddon is actually like a major player. How do people like Ahriman look at that? How do people like Ahriman feel about that?
Especially with Iskander Kane with Abaddon.
Especially with Iskander Kane on Terra.
Yeah, blinded on Terra. Like, I'm sorry, Black Library won't let you do this ADB, but I really need you to write the other Crusades.
I need that so bad in my life. I know he's like having some real life stuff between like moving and just having like a baby or whatever. Like
Right.
that's hard work. Um, it's my worst nightmare is having a baby right now. But
Well, technically,
like
he didn't have the baby.
that's true. But I mean, let's be real. When you're married, you both have that baby. Um, I need more of that. But I want to see like, does Ahriman know about that? Because he knows Kane.
Apparently, Kane was
I,
part of his cabal.
well, we knew that, right? Because we
No,
knew that from Ahriman's.
I actually didn't. Like, I know it was mentioned like in the last book, but but prior to that, no. And I found that very interesting that he was part of his cabal. I was like, yeah, I'm with this. And then the WH40k happened. And he's like, dude.
The thing that haunts Kane is he tried to stop Ahriman.
Yeah.
Like, I am legit excited for that. Which is kind of weird to say because as much as I've just spent like the last hour poo-pooing this book and trying to very delicately.
Well,
Um,
in a
I
way,
am looking
we
forward to
are
it.
almost 10 years too late.
You know what? I'll agree with you there. And I hate to say this. I have some like unhealed trauma from the Fabulous Bill series. A lot of the tricks, and I understand that a lot of the tricks that he played, that Reynolds played with Fabulous Bill, started with these. Like John French technically tried to pull those same tricks first of, hey, I'm not such a bad guy. No, obviously Fabulous Bill series leaned way heavier into it because in the Fabulous Bill series, our biggest complaint was this is not the same character from the Horus Heresy.
At least this Ahriman is very similar.
Very similar. The first book, that first half where he's like, what was I? Not the same character, but once he kind of comes into his own,
Mm-hmm.
and this book, definitely the same guy. Like, a little different, has definitely learned some lessons, has taken some hard knocks, but still more or less the same dude.
Yeah.
So I do like that and I appreciate that. I will say, as much as I dislike this book, I am glad I read it. At least I have it under my belt. There are some things about him I know, and it gave us another example of an Inquisitor who just needs an adult. He is just, they all have affluenza.
I'd like to point out to our listeners and viewers that Jen bought this book way before I did. Like, she bought it, I think, the year it came out. And I was like, and so,
The omnibus, yeah.
and I was like, I don't know who because at the time, I'm clueless. Like, I don't know who Ahriman is. And then after reading A Thousand Suns and knowing that how much she doesn't like Thousand Suns, even back then I was like, why did she buy this book?
You know what? It
So-
was published in 2017.
So
It's omnibus.
I didn't force her to do this. Just getting that out
No.
there.
No, and to give even more credit, like I brought this upon myself. Carrie was going to go ahead and just read them, and I was like, dude, I bought the book in 2017. I should read this damn thing. Like, and again, I'm glad that I'm finally going through it. I do feel really guilty when I buy books, and then I'm like, oh yeah, that book. Never read it.
Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm getting through it. I'm glad that I'm reading it. I'm not enjoying the experience, but kind of like the same reason that I read the Twilight books. At least I can say that I did. And I'm not just being a hater.
You have to have, knowledge behind your hate. I just brought her around full circle.
Anyways,
You know what else is a full circle? A certain faction symbol.
Yes! It's kind of funny because typically when we do these like Chaos Marine books, we try to do something else to balance it out, but no, we're just going full tilt. We're just going to dive right into it. We are going to read another oldie that we haven't yet read yet somehow. Karn, Eater of Worlds by Anthony Reynolds. This is a story, I never got around to reading it when it first came out, but it's limited edition though. I think everybody knows that I have a thing for them. And this is a beautiful limited edition. I cannot even tell you how nice the cover is.
Oh, wow. First published in 2014.
Yeah, so this is around the same time period. I love this inside cover here. It's a beautiful limited edition, and I'm really excited to read this because it does get referenced sometimes. Like we've had people in our comments before referenced it. I see it get referenced on Reddit a lot. So I'm really excited to dive into this one.
And I don't know much about Karn.
Chili con carne?
Really pre-heresy or post-heresy. I've learned like some about Karn during the heresy and the pre-heresy. And the only time I've ever really seen him, though, I guess in the modern times, was in Shroud of Night. Now, he gets referenced, but even then, like, he was just this big rage monster just hacking through. So I'm curious what a book about him is going to be like. So
Makes two of us. When you get to Betrayer, you will see a whole lot more of Karn, and you will really like him. In fact, well, you won't really have time to squeeze that in. I was going to say, if you could somehow squeeze that in, it will help. It really will, I think.
I don't know. I've been getting through a Horus Heresy book a week lately, so maybe.
But the thing that's fun about it, for me at least, is that we read The Thousand Sons, which is one of your favorite legions, and now we're going to read a World Eaters, which is one of my favorite. The World Eaters are not thinkers. Their problem is not that they want too much knowledge.
They're berserkers.
Yeah. They're not scholars. They're like the opposite of scholars. Like, I like to imagine that like Ahriman would be sitting over there reading a book and Karn's eating the book. Modern Karn, not heresy Karn, obviously. Pre-heresy Karn would not have been eating the book, but this one's definitely the paste eater in the kindergarten class. Let's be real. So Carrie, when I start referencing that.
All right, you know what? That's all I'm going to think of every time when I'm reading this. Is like, oh, the paste eater. He's not a world eater. He's a paste eater.
Kind of all of the world eaters. Let's be real. Crazy.
Well, during the heresy, they ate worlds. After the heresy, they eat paste. I mean, kind of makes sense.
And blood and skulls and all that.
They don't eat the skulls. They need the skulls for the throne.
True. I don't know what they do with their lives, Carrie. But I'm not judging.
I imagine they kill a lot of things.
Oh, undoubtedly.
I mean, I guess if all the Chaos Gods, if I had to, they put a gun to my head and said I had to, like, and I couldn't say neither and have them kill me. No, I have to choose one. I'd be Khorne.
Right. I mean, it's not a good thing, but man, I'm too vain for the other three.
Yeah, same.
Do you want to take us out, Carrie?
Yeah, I sure will before we go down that rabbit hole of, well, I guess if I was Slaanesh, I might think I was pretty, but...
Like Lucius, look at my skin.
Or, crap, Fulgrim. Anyway, so you listened to the Warhammer 40k book club episode regarding Ahriman Sorcerer by John French. I was going to grab my book, but it's underneath two other books, so maybe Jen will grab it. So be sure to join us next time for I do have this book, Karn, Eater of Worlds by Anthony Reynolds. We've never read anything by him, I don't believe. We are an unofficial book club and not affiliated with the Black Library or any of its affiliates. You can find both the vidcast and podcast on our website, WH40kbookclub.com. If you like this episode, please like, subscribe, give a review, and all those things to the vidcast on YouTube or the podcast anywhere you get podcasts. Our site also has articles about adventures and reading other Warhammer 40k books and short stories outside of the book club books, so please stay a while and read from our crag. And yeah, I'm still Alfarius.
And I got a fat cat.
The cat is fat.
Can't argue with it. Got a fat cat. Can't argue with the fat cat.
I got nothing. See, because I can't argue with it.
Exactly.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.